We are back here on the Choose954 podcast with local architect, urban farmer, overall good guy, and now tour operator, Michael Madfis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
For those of you that aren't aware of Choose954, what we're doing here, we started a social movement to cultivate culture and community here in Broward County, where I'm from, in an effort to bring people together over our shared passions, keep people in know with all the great things that are going on between the arts, food, music, and overall culture, in an effort to make this a better place to live and not just a better place to vacation. So the point of the podcast is to connect you with great people like Michael that are doing amazing things throughout town. So hopefully you can find out about new things like his tour.
Thank you.
So why don't you start off by telling us at a high level a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, well, there's a lot to say, I guess. I'm 61 years old. I came from Boston, Massachusetts. I moved here in 1984. Actually first lived in North Miami for a few years and bought a home in Fort Lauderdale. And I was educated as an architect in Boston at the Boston Architectural College. Worked there for a number of years just before moving here. And then started my architectural practice in 1998, a few years after I worked for a few firms locally and raised a family. And by 2010, we had one of the larger architectural firms in Fort Lauderdale. We had a staff of 15 architects plus support. We were doing a lot of commercial, industrial work. We did some land planning and flats, and got involved almost at every level of development from South Miami all the way to Palm Beach. Also did work in the Bahamas and outside some of those areas and across the United States. So I had a full architectural practice, and at the end of 2010, we had been through the recession, a big chunk of the recession, still quite a bit more to go, I guess. And we had said, we had downsized the firm, and I had some change in my relationship with my wife, and my children had moved on to college. And I thought it might be a great time to experiment with a different approach. And I looked at sustainability. I had become a sustainable architect in 2007. I became LEED certified, and I had practiced in that way really since the start of my business in the 80s. I remember the recession, the oil crisis rather. And so that became a big part of our practice, was always environmental and sustainability. But by the end of 2010, I was looking at it and deciding, was it working? And what were the fundamental issues with it? And I saw an opportunity to transition from my formal practice of architecture into urban sustainable food.
It's funny how those two go together, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. I haven't had an architect on the podcast before. What or how did you get into architecture?
Thank you for asking that question. So in high school, it comes a time when you start thinking about your career, where you're going to go to college perhaps, or what are you going to do when you graduate. And I loved art. I loved being creative. I did painting, I did sculpture, I did freehand drawing, I enjoyed. And I also was involved in mechanics. I loved physics, and I was designing bicycles and squash rackets on carbon fiber. And, I had a lot of opportunity to do some fun things. So when I looked at the profession of being an artist, I got nervous, and I thought, well, who's going to make money, being an artist? I always hear about starving artists, and I just didn't know. But I knew, the stuff I was designing mechanically was, had what seemed to me to be valued. And so I said, what can I do mechanically that's creative and artistic? And I thought, well, architecture. And I thought maybe product design or industrial design. But architecture, my friend's father was an architect, and I saw his practice and his lifestyle and the way he lived. And he's an architect in Boston, third generation. Family came over on the Mayflower, basically. So I didn't get all of that at the beginning, but that's part of where his lifestyle came from. But anyway, it was beautiful, and I said that's what I want to do. So that's really was my inspiration, and then it continued through college.
So why do you feel that it's not only important to you, but why is it important to, in this instance specifically, the city of Fort Lauderdale?
Why it's architecture?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all great cities have great architecture. It's not the only thing that they have. They can also have beautiful climate and beautiful environment and natural conditions and so forth. But, you know, the architecture tells the story, like any art. Some of the most dramatic pieces of art for me were Goya's paintings of the Revolution in Spain, and they were just, they told a powerful story. Architecture can really do the same thing. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be what we consider to be beautiful or well-worked architecture, because it's the experiences too, not just the product. And these stories create value. It's been proven that stories bring value to products and experiences. So great cities, have great architecture. They leads to the great stories, reinforces them, and creates a sense of place where these stories take place. We can connect to them. They have characters that we can embody and experience, and when we share those connections and those experiences, builds civic pride and value, just value overall, and not just for the residents, but for people who come to visit. Maybe the only reason they come to visit.
And as we were just discussing, in my travels to Chicago, and probably many people's travels to Chicago, you take the famed boat architecture tours.
Yeah.
And it gave, as I mentioned, it gave me a great new appreciation for the city and architecture overall. So with that said, what is the why behind why you started your architecture tour?
So that's it. Great cities have great architecture. They have great tours. The tours unveil the stories. The stories are there. They don't need to be created. They're just in full audio. A lot of the stories are just almost hidden. They haven't been discovered. They haven't been shared. They may be shared within, certain parts of the community. People who've been here a long time discover them through whatever means. Maybe as an architect, for me, as I investigated land and land plats and previous construction, and I was here at a time, really of transition, and I missed some of it. But then, the question was, well, how did this end up the way it is? Andrews Avenue with old buildings on it and not, fully utilized. And I realized, well, 595 came in and they cut it off from the airport, and it used to be the main street, and Burdines went to Galleria, and now it's the county building. So all that story, answers a lot of questions and makes people feel comfortable, and it tells the history. And I just didn't really touch on much of the history that comes from that, but these are the elements that have to be uncovered that will tell the story. And that's what will make our city great and create a sense of place and connection.
Not to give away too much of the tour, obviously, but what are some hidden gems that folks might not know, recognize, or appreciate?
So, great architecture has great stories. So a lot of the pieces we know, we often maybe not have visited, even if we've lived here a long time, are places like Stranahan House. It was the home of Frank and Ivy Stranahan. Many people consider them the founders of Fort Lauderdale, one of the first pioneering families. And that story about them is what makes that piece of architecture even that much more valuable and significant. Yes, it's a beautiful little home. It was their trading post, and yes, it has some great environmental features of high windows that allow air to come in without bringing in the mosquitoes because they only fly so high. There's elements of that you don't see in modern structures that could be actually very beneficial. And then buildings like Bonnet House Museum and Garden. Again, character family from wealth and artistic, and lived an interesting lifestyle. There's just endless stories about them. And if you go visit those places, you will learn those stories, and you'll have those memories, and you'll have that sense of place, the connection to the river, the connection to the slough at the Stranahan House, at the Bonnet House, and the art, and the people that came there. So those are things that are significant elements of architecture in Fort Lauderdale. Other ones that maybe the secrets are somewhat unveiled but still have a lot to be told are buildings like the Federal Courthouse on 3rd Avenue and Broward Boulevard. To me, that's one of the greatest pieces of architecture that we have. But it's overlooked. First of all, it's dysfunctional right now. The water fountain isn't working. Yet that water fountain represented the swamp. And those large columns that support that huge concrete canopy represent the cypress trees. And the canopy itself is represented by the concrete cap on top. And the atmosphere in there during a hot day is 10 to 15 degrees cooler as it would be around a cypress swamp. And if you look in there closely, which a lot of people don't even walk in there, but when you do, there's a bunch of places that are like human scale for you to sit down close to that water. And when it was active and it was moving, it created a little bit of a noise that was very calming, right in the middle of the city. So it had these beautiful natural features. Yes, it was a public building that maybe many people didn't have any purpose to be there, hopefully. Still did have good administrative resources. And yet, no one quite got the story of how to use it and enjoy it. Yeah, we have political rallies there, and that's beautiful. It's perfect for that, and it should be like that. And then you go to the city of Boston, and they've got a similar kind of plaza, only it's like 3 times as large, and they can have the entire, million people there after the Celtics win the championship. But at the same time, when there's only 100 people there and they're spread out over the 3 acres, they still find cozy little places to be, which is very similar in a little smaller scale at the Federal Courthouse. Another great building, also done by William Morgan, is the main library. Broward County Library,
which has interesting features inside and outside that you appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a lot of movement. There's a lot of long distance views. You can anticipate things. You can feel very comfortable in there. And this is true really of great libraries around the world. But they took those things and put them into a very modern building that many people don't quite see it that way. They use beautiful coral stone on the south and west sides, and coral stone is very porous and has very little mass to it. It will not hold heat very long. And those are the hot sides of the building. And you'll notice that the windows are recessed and have a lot of shade screening on them. So they took a lot of time, a lot of effort. They used natural local materials, again, just like you did on the other side. You used a reference to a very local environment. And it has glass to the north, which, again, libraries are known for this, so that there's no direct sun generally from the sun on the north side of the building, except maybe a little bit in the summer at the summer solstice. So the issue is, that building incorporates a lot of environmental elements and is very much a people place. So those are buildings that I find significant. But like I say, the story of some of these buildings is a little less known. And I think this is part of what the tour can bring out.
And all of those, the Stranahan House, the Bonded House, and the downtown main library, if you haven't been, they're pretty much all tour-worthy works of art, and obviously very significant to the city. So definitely encourage anybody, if you haven't been, even to the downtown main library. And now they have a co-working space, a creation station, and a 3D printer that you can use. A lot of great classes and workshops and a lot of great activations. So I would definitely encourage you to check out all of those. And shout out to April Perk and the Stranahan House and all the great work that she does over there. Stepping away from architecture, the way that we met initially, probably 2 years ago, was at the Los Olas Farmers Market. Unfortunately, no longer there, but we are working to bring it back. How and why did you get into farming and choose to work as an urban farmer?
So it was a natural transition, as I was saying at the end of describing, where I was and who I am. I don't just identify with being an architect. I'm a great father.
Overall, big guy.
So actually, we have very good experiences together. I got into urban farming as a natural transition again from the architectural field, especially at the time in the economy and the scale of work that was available architecturally. We had been going after a lot of work, and the work that was available was mostly with municipalities, so we didn't have a lot of experience with that, and it was getting expensive. continuing in that direction. So we, like I say, I looked at environmental and economical sustainability, because that was one of the things that I was frustrated about with the economy. I think a lot of people were, how do we minimize these dramatic failures? And so we look at the risk and the waste involved in the system. And with food, I recognized, as an architect and an urban planner, I was made aware of transportation systems, and food relies heavily on transportation. And as it turns out, 90% of the cost of food was related to transportation and the associated refrigeration storage that's required. So again, as an architect, one of the big things we did was commercial industrial work, which related to warehousing and so forth. So I understood these costs. And then when you look at delivery, and it gets delivered in a beautiful supermarket that, again, as an architect, I'm aware those supermarkets are not cheap. They're $400 a square foot to build, and they're very expensive to operate when you think about the energy needed. And they keep squirting water on everything, and it's amazing. So I said, there's got to be a better way, to do this, or a way that we can experiment with and develop some models around. So we had fun for about 7 years creating all these different models, and our goal was to develop a replicable method that we could use throughout the county, create vocational opportunities in sustainable architecture, connection to the community, through education, and just, as customers of the farm. The farmer would, became a steward of the environment and an esteemed member of the community. So it was exciting, and we got the model to work here and there. We worked with the housing authority and had some great success there. We did about 4 private farms ourselves. We ended up doing some commercial farms that are still in operation, that have been taken over by others. And then, a handful of other people just decided to, tag along and do their own thing. And we're really excited that they did, and they've been pretty successful in those efforts as well. So. And then the tours came from there, really. That was our next evolution.
It's unfortunate because where I live in Camden, Los Olas, Broward and Federal, there really isn't a supermarket within walking distance.
Yes, I'm so lucky where I am here.
Right, that you can.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, literally. Yeah. And one of the things that I really missed about the Los Olas Sunday Market was the fact that I could walk my dog, get a smoothie, get my produce, get a few things for the week, build real relationships with the farmers, Judith Ozer.
Yes, and she's still around.
Yeah?
She's working over at Criswell Farm.
Correct. Can you tell them where Criswell is?
Criswell is on Northeast 6th Avenue. No, Northwest 6th Avenue, that's right. Northwest 6th Avenue. And just north of Broward Boulevard and south of 2nd Street. There's a fire station over there, and there's also the Habitat for Humanity restore is there as well. He's sort of hidden between those two.
So if you're looking for a great urban farm?
Yeah, urban farm. He really has the same technique as we had, and he's added a lot more. And Kevin is very creative, very focused on his work. And Judy, who was the actually, she used to buy from all the farms and then take the food to the variety of markets, including Los Olas. And she always had great selection. And so she's joined Kevin over there. And they do source from some other local farms as well, so they have a great variety. And I really encourage people.
And the other one I would mention, if you're looking for an urban farm or farm, place to get your produce and shop local or support local, the Urban Farming Institute.
Yeah.
Another great place, and also Mirando.
Yeah.
And also, of course, if you don't know, still in the 954 a little bit further south. I mean, it seems like people are falling in love more and more with yellow green.
Yeah, I think yellow green's gotten really improved. I mean, look, I'm a local farmer, and I get very critical about markets. And I enjoyed. We actually had a garden in Dania for a long time, and we would go direct to yellow green, and they were really gracious and beautiful. And then I feel like, maybe it got a little bit thinned out in terms of local and fresh and all that. But today, I think it is really.
It's becoming, I'm seeing more and more people post on social media like a trip,
Oh, yeah, I don't go there as often as I would like, but when I do go, I end up, harvesting a lot.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people that I know now. It's exciting. They really have grown into a great network. it's great.
There was a picture recently of, I want to say Gordon Ramsay was shopping there. And if you haven't been, there's a great, amazing hidden gem restaurant, Chill Bar.
Oh yeah, Chill Bar. Well, she's been there almost from the beginning, she and her husband. And yeah, they bought food from us, and we made recipes with them, and they're very sweet people.
Oh, yeah.
And they do catering, and
And the quality is.
Yeah, they've been there a long time. I like the mushroom guy, and I like the Jamaican sandwiches.
The vegan one?
It's a vegan, yeah.
Yeah. In the corner.
Yeah, in the corner, yeah.
Amazing. You can get just about anything there. So if you haven't been, once again, Yellow Green Farmers Market only open on the weekends, right off of Sheridan and 95. Mirando Farms, Criswell Farms, Urban Farming Institute. Any other friends or people you want to mention?
I think there's a few more out there, but I can't think of
Yeah.
them. But yeah, I appreciate
Well,
it.
you know what? We might actually add a section to the Choose954 website. I've been putting maps together of like local restaurants to go support local coffee shops. So I'm going to make a note to add local farms. With that said, back to the design piece, and I know we can talk about this forever. I want to be respectful to your time. What are your inspirations for your design?
So I love, it's a broad term, I guess, but I love innovation. And so, as an architect, when I first got started, computers were coming out. And I was, sort of thinking, this would be cool to just homogenize all my clients into taking the same computer, drafting stuff that we've done once, then we just sort of keep producing it, it'd be easy. And I loved innovation even back then, and I sort of forgot that for a few minutes. Excuse me, but innovation doesn't necessarily mean new things. It can mean taking a look at something old and seeing that it may apply really well again today. And an innovation in the 50s and 40s, 50s, and 60s was to cool a building by adding air conditioning, putting in insulated windows, providing window blinds or shades that could, block out the heat. Similar things to that. In the olden days, we would have a large roof overhang and create a colonnade or a veranda, half enclosed space that would filter the light, reduce the heat from that, as well as collect breezes that would keep the perimeter of the building cool.
I never really considered all that.
But of course, the overhangs take up a little more space, and we want to compact our buildings. They might appear to cost more money, but of course, when we look at life cycle costing, they may actually save money because the energy required but they could be more expensive to build initially. So rather than bringing the cost of the product up higher, the developer may feel they're out of competition when they start offering those features and may have a hard time selling these value ideas. And I think that's, a lot of them just gave up, and it's a shame because I think those people can appreciate that stuff. And now we get to come back and be innovative by reintroducing what about a veranda. There was a house existing on 16th Street down by A1A, and they had a very low-lying area over there. And if a surge came through, even if they evacuate, their house could be gone. So one of the things, they wanted to add on to the house and do these different things, and I said, what if we created these concrete verandas, that we built around the perimeter of the home, that had colonnades on them, and they basically were built to hurricane, surge, protection standards. And they're not that, it's not like rebuilding a whole house, but you're rebuilding the perimeter house. Now you're getting some additional space, you're getting the veranda porch that you wanted. We could even create space on the roof or stairway up or whatever you want. Get this view out over the ocean. And this investment is actually going to pay back because it's going to reduce the exposure and possible loss of your home. And then you might even be able to go to an insurance company and ask them.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, because now you've got this thing. I thought, this would be a great product. I have these verandas, I'll just, cookie cutter those out, and we'll be putting them across every house. But these are innovations that are really just going back to old ideas, and so I love that stuff, and so I call it innovative. I'm also, like I say, I love designing things mechanically, and I love physics, and if I can, enjoy, make some excitement out of that. Yeah, some of my favorite architects are people like Franklin Wright and Buckminster Fuller. They work a lot with, concrete form and geometries. I love sacred geometries. They're very supportive naturally. And so, those are things I find inspirational.
And with that said, what is the importance and significance of environmental and sustainable design?
Well, there are two different things in my mind. And to clarify, environmental design to me is the essence of architecture, the beginning of architecture. We can also look at it as art in our relationship to the built form. But when I talk about it as the beginning of architecture, you think about, okay, man is around and it's getting cold out. I gotta, protect myself from the environment. Well, I want to still let the sun in, so I'm gonna put the cold winds coming from the north, so I'm gonna build the solid wall, facing that north side, and the open wall with a little door and maybe, something that will screen some of the wind, but still let some of the sun in, because I need the warmth, and that's relating to the environment. And they might learn that, seasonally things shift and they adjust for that as well. And they have an overhang that catches the sun when it's too hot, but lets the sun in when it's cool. And so that's environmental design. We can use that today, like I was saying earlier, about creating these verandas so we don't have to use the mechanics of air conditioning always to cool. We still need the air conditioning perhaps to back up if we need it, but not all the time if we can add these environmental components that respond to the context. Sustainable design, in my mind, it came out of the fear of losing our environment, and we wanted to sustain it, maintain it.
Especially down here.
Anywhere, yeah. But yeah, especially where we live. And so we, there's a doctrine or a protocol for what is sustainable, and it basically says, not creating anything such that it would limit the possibilities of the future. And, in other words, not messing things up so that our children are going to have trouble in the future. And if we can set that up, that's called sustainability. So it's not burning fossil fuels so that, climate changes and then our children are going to have, sea level rise and all those issues. So it's going to carbon neutral and not burning the fossil fuels, setting up solar and wind and other methods of creating energy. And these are mechanical, and they have impact just to create them themselves. You don't just get it almost. I saw one of those huge propeller things being delivered the other day on a truck up in someplace up in North Carolina. And I couldn't believe the size of this thing. And there was a lot of material in there extracted out of the earth, and it had to be probably heated up and shaped and machined. And so you're just thinking about the carbon footprint just to create that, and then there's hundreds of those things. So I don't know if that's really the solution, but that's what I think sustainability is referring to. It's trying to find a way to become neutral in our operation mechanically, by creating all these gadgets that will do that for us, as a farmer, I was a big fan of gasification, which is basically composting. And when you do it under a controlled environment, even with heat, you get hydrogen and methane. And you don't get carbon out of the atmosphere. And then you get a solid, which is charcoal. And that can be used to fortify the soil and capture carbon again. So this has been around since after World War II. Millions of cars in Europe ran on gasifiers when oil wasn't available right after the war.
Sure.
And the two things, it operated the cars and it got rid of a lot of carbon waste, that we converted to charcoal and hydrogen. So I don't know why we don't do that. We do these, solid waste incinerators to energy that just create ash that we have to bury, charcoal, and carbon into the air that we scrub out with a scrubber. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, it made me think of one last thing I wanted to ask you, and it's interesting that you talk about innovation and as relates to farming and architecture. I just was in Israel, and they took us on the tour of the salad trail. which is this gentleman, Uri Alon, that created like the drip irrigation system.
Yeah.
And they're creating, they produce in the desert.
Yeah.
And it was Ben Gurion stream for Greener Israel. What, in terms of innovation, and two parts. One that came to mind, what do you think about green roofs? And two, what is something that somebody listening can institute fairly easily into their life that can be a little bit more sustainable?
Okay. I love those.
In any order.
Yeah, I'll do the green roof first. I think green roofs are great. I think that there are some materials. I mean, I tried farming on the roof.
On a green roof?
Well, I mean, so we did work on the roof at 110 Tower on their garage roof, 7th level, where they used to have some fountains or pools, and we just turned those into gardens. And the issue there was the vertical movement of things, bringing the soil and all the materials up. Initially, it was a big effort. And then I remember, trying to harvest to get it down to the market. You're going through a Class A lobby and all that stuff. So it really wasn't the most practical. It was fun, and we really thought we'd get a lot of attention. We did it first, but it's
a great idea in principle.
But a green roof, when I think about that in terms of the sustainability component, is like a turf. Almost like Bahia grass. Almost doesn't need mowing. It's just needs to be kept watered and a little bit of nutrition, and it really, almost, is easy to maintain. So what's going to happen there is that, you'll get some ecology growing there. You'll get some insects and birds and things like that, and you don't need to really disturb them unless you need the big flocks. But it can be supportive of the habitat, and they're cool, and you can use wastewater from the building to irrigate them. And I think, that's it. I think they can work. You're wetting your roof, and of course, if you're thinking about things as an environmental architect, you could say, well, the idea of the roof is to keep the water off, now we're putting water on the roof.
But there's many layers to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you use mechanics to make it work.
Right.
And then, you can go as an environmental designer, you can talk about earth buildings, you sort of mold things into the ground. You can even bury it, build it sort of above ground and then bury it, and then plant, all things over it, soil and what have you. And then have a door or windows or portholes or all kinds of pop-up things. You've seen those, they're fun and innovative. So in like bunkers almost. But they can be very cool because they're in the earth, and they can also have the exposure of glass that can warm them when needed. So those are, I would almost consider environmental, where the other one might be considered, sustainable.
Sure. And I don't know where I've seen it, but I have seen them probably more online than in reality, but they seem so practical.
Yeah, they seem, I think it's one of the things I enjoy most about when I talk about the sustainable gadgets or the mechanics, I think. And I think they are making all time value. There's some, windmills and solar panels are all worth, understanding and using. And I think the same thing with green roofs. You have at the appropriate place and with the person or the group that wants to maintain it and enjoy it, and it can be a really good way to go. Roofs are always a challenge.
Sure. Well, maybe the next phase of your career and evolution, we can look at that. Exactly. What's one thing that somebody listening could implement?
Yeah. So I love that question because it's such a simple thing. Soil. So we live in an area where really a lot of our soil has been turned over and developed, and we filled and what have you. But soil sequesters carbon, and it also retains stormwater or any water runoff. And these are issues that we deal with all the time. So one simple thing we can do is compost and cultivate the soil where we are. And if everybody in the world stopped and did that again, which is virtually farming, but we don't have to farm our whole yard. When I say cultivate soil, I mean, plant some plants in the garden. Make sure the soil is rich and maintained without chemicals. Use a compost, which is the waste from your home. It doesn't have, like I say, you don't have to do your whole yard. If you do a segment, and then maybe expand it and expand it and expand it, or more and more people keep doing it, I really think that's a significant factor and something that is relatively easy to do. It's also fun. It can be healing and therapeutic. It connects us back to nature. I think we need to remember that we're all nurtured by Mother Earth. All the nutrition in the world comes from our soil. Because even if you don't eat a plant ever, what do you think the animal has to eat that you're eating? It's got to eat some plants. So it ultimately starts with our soil. And if we can, it's such a basic, simple thing we can do. So I think everyone can do that.
Yeah, and my parents love farming. My parents love planting and gardening, and vegetables. So I'm gonna bring you some soil, Mom and Dad. So a few things to mention, as always, towards the end of the podcast here, upcoming. We're going to tie them all together. We have a new monthly breakfast lecture series, mini TED Talk, called Creative Zen. We say it's for the creative community. Everyone's welcome. Everyone's creative. We do them the second Friday morning of the month, every month at a different venue. This month upcoming, we have Denise Jacobs, who's a well-known author, TEDx and South by Southwest speaker. She's going to be speaking to us at Ride Element, which is a new cycle shop, spinning type of workout environment. Beautiful, brand new, over in Oakland Park, right near the Oakland Park City Hall. That's going to be on September the 14th. The doors open at 8:30. The talk starts at 9, and we're always out of there by 10 a.m. Free event, coffee, breakfast, networking, and just another way to bring people together and inspire our local community one Friday morning a month. So that's AAF Creative Zen. You can find that on Choose954. This Sunday, we have the next installment of one of my favorite music events of the month, So Far Sounds. Beautiful songs from a room experience, very intimate. You have to request access or be invited. It's not an open event. It really is to reward music fans, and it's a really great experience. It's one of 400 chapters across the globe that we have here in Fort Lauderdale. This is going to be another great show this Sunday, so you can look up So Far Sounds. Subscribe to their newsletter so you can get notifications of when the next shows take place. And Choose954 is glad and very proud to be a media sponsor and partner of So Far Sounds to help get the word out. Just as we are with Madfis Tours as well, to help get the word out. Of course, we want to get the word out about these great things. We also would like to get the word out, speaking about Madfis Tours. This Saturday is going to be the monthly Fort Lauderdale Art Walk. If you haven't been to Art Walk in downtown Fort Lauderdale in Flagler Village, it's my favorite community event of the month. It's probably our greatest community event of the month. It's one of the only times that 4,000 or 5,000 people come together over the arts, over the community. I always like to say, for people that might not be familiar, the galleries stay open late. Warehouses have activations and installations in them. There's food trucks, live art, live music, local vendors. President Armstrong from Broward College is going to bring out his 1964 classic car for a photo booth at CNI Studios, he just told me. So definitely make sure you check that out. And then if you're out for the art walk, that same time, you can catch
The tour, from 5:30 to 7:30.
and give us just a little bit of a quick little overview of the tour.
So the tour route will start at Peter Feldman Park and head down south of on 3rd Avenue, and then loop to the west to Andrews Avenue, just a block or two over, and then go north on Andrews back up toward the Mass District, where we'll finish up so people can connect with the art walk right at that time.
At what time do you start? 5:00?
So we start at 5:30.
5:30? Okay.
Pretty sure that's what we posted. We're going to really try to keep the tour to just a little bit more than an hour, though I think I sort of cut out sort of a 2-hour window there.
And Peter Feldman Park is on 6th?
6th and 3rd Avenue, northeast 3rd Avenue at Northeast 6th Street, often known as Sistrunk as well.
And you can find free parking at in Mass District, which is behind Sears on Federal and Sunrise, right off of 4th there, where the Hive is with Glitch and Juice Bar, and the Wander Shop is open. So there's 2 free parking lots there behind Sears on Federal and Sunrise, and you can just walk over a couple blocks, and then the tour will take you back to Mass District, where you can take advantage of the art walk.
That's the idea of the loop, is that if you did want to park at the area just referred to in the art district there, you'll end up there when you take the tour.
Beautiful. And one other tour that we're very excited about that's going to take place during the recently launched Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week that my partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, and I have created around the same week of Art Fort Lauderdale. Is we are working with the AIA again, the Architects Association local chapter, and they are going to be creating, as part of Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, an architectural biennial focusing on sea level rise, also doubling as their awards and design showcase. So this is going to take place between the week of January 19th through the 27th, and then during that week, they're going to be doing an architectural tour of Fort Lauderdale. During that week, it's also the Art Walk, so Mike will be giving a tour on architecture, and we're going to look to loop those up. If you have a cultural institution or gallery, studio, or anything in Fort Lauderdale related to arts and culture that you would like to be a part of Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, please feel free to reach out to us. We have a submittal form that's going to be on the website launching soon. We want to activate the entire city with arts and culture and create civic pride and connect not only our local community with the local people doing great things in the community around arts and culture, but also tourists and visitors alike.
Exactly.
This is a really great thing, and also if you happen to not be familiar with Art Fort Lauderdale and you appreciate architecture and homes, we created the first art fair in the world that takes place in private mansions off of the Los Wilson coastal waterways, only accessible via boats with the use of water taxis. Many times when you're on the water taxi, they tell you this is so-and-so's house, this is so-and-so's house. You never get to go into those houses. Well, during Art Fort Lauderdale, you do. And we actually curate the homes in a 4-day art fair format where the art is distributed all throughout the home. So that is the art fair on the water. That takes place January 24th through the 27th as part of Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week, which is produced by the same great folks, my partner Andrew Martineau and myself, that produced Choose954 and all these great things that we're doing throughout the community, just as another way to elevate the arts and culture, bring people together. My pleasure, thank you, and really just make this a better place to live, and not just a better place to vacation. We all know it's a great place to vacation, but we live here too, and our community really deserves to have things like this. So you can stay tuned to Choose954 on social media. We also have a newsletter. It's not spammy, I promise. It goes out every Tuesday morning. If you have any questions on arts and culture, anything in Fort Lauderdale community related, don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you have any questions about tours, architecture, urban farming, or Boston, you can reach out to Mr. Madfis here. And really appreciate you joining us today. This was really great. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the tour.
One last little picture.
Yeah, go ahead.
One last little picture. Just want to thank Aura at Flagler Village for letting us use their space here in their business suite, I guess.
Yeah, another new addition to Fort Lauderdale.
Thank you.
Cheers.